This is my audience. Have you ever been in a situation where you need a little bit of extra cash, whether it's an emergency or you just didn't make enough money this paycheck and you need to pay a bill? As a licensed pawnbroker, I'm here to explain to you how a pawn works, and I'm here to inform you of what the process is within a pawn. First, I'll tell you the purpose of a pawn, then I'll tell you how it works, and then I'll tell you about the security features that are involved in a pawn. The pawn business has been around for a long time, and it's one of the first financial institutions. The main purpose of a pawn is to write a loan to a customer that comes in need of some money for short term. They bring an item as collateral, and we write it towards that. Many of the customers that come into the pawn business, they just need a little bit of money, and they don't have good credit, so they don't go to banks. Most of the loans that we write out are less than $100, and they're pretty quick and easy to write. And don't require much information. Now I'll tell you about how the pawn business works. Customer comes into the pawn shop and they bring in an item as collateral. The pawnbroker then looks at the item and sees what quality it's in and sees what it's worth. They value the item, and depending on what the customer wants to borrow, they write a loan according to that. Usually when a customer comes in, they know how much they need to borrow, or they know, we get an idea of what the value of the item is. The pawnbroker values the item and he writes the loan according to that. In a pawn business, there also is the option to sell your items. Usually you can always get a little bit more money by selling it, but the option is there for you to write it down as a loan so you can come back and pick it up. When the customer comes back to pick up the item, there's an interest charge that is assessed. The interest charge that's assessed, it's actually not created by the pawn shop. It's actually a state-regulated pawn. Whatever the interest is, it depends on what amount you borrow and also for how long it is at the pawn shop. Many people get the misconception that most of the things in the pawn shop are stolen. And the last thing I'm going to talk to you about is about what the security that is for your items that you bring into the pawn shop. What it is, usually 1% of the items that are in the pawn shop are actually stolen. And many people think that when you steal an item, you take it to the pawn shop and you get your money for it. That's probably not the smartest thing to do. Whenever a person brings an item into the pawn shop, the pawnbroker, what goes involved into writing the loan is he copies down serial numbers, model numbers, descriptions, and he inputs it into a database on the computer. And according what the serial number or any description is on the item, that database gets transferred over to the police departments all over the country that can actually look at the database and see what's going through the pawn shops. It's actually a safety feature for items that are stolen. People report stolen. It's not a very smart thing to do if you're a thief and bring in an item, because you do need to provide some credentials. You need a state ID, passport, and some other different types of identification that could be used to write a loan. All the info goes into the computer, and if something does come up that you brought was stolen, you are the first one to blame, and you get questioned about it. And also another security aspect that is involved with the pawn shop is the insurance. All pawn shops are required to have a theft insurance, as well as fire and flood and different types of protection for items that are at the store. That stuff is all covered. Anything that goes into the database is covered to be under the insurance, so you will get your things replaced if anything would happen. First, I told you about the main purpose of a pawn business. Then I explained to you how the pawn works. And finally, I told you about the security features that are involved with the pawn shop. I hope I've provided good information about the pawn business to you. And if you ever need money, you do know how a pawn works now. We're excited. I used Pawn Shops, the Customer's Lender of Last Resort. It's an article written by John P. Caskey and Brian J. Zickelman. And that was on the KansasCityFed.org website. My second works cited was the Pawn Shops Today, the National Voice of Pawn Industry. It's a website. It's called www.pawnshopstoday.com. And they have a link on there that tells you how it works. Thank you. And this is my audience again.